Anyway, go ahead with that.
Okay, so he's Piers Morgan. He's on this show, and they're basically blaming genetics on being obese. These women are.
Yeah.
And he goes, and then some other lady goes, well, if all that's true, I mean, it sounds like what can you really do to even lose weight? And then Piers Morgan interrupts and goes, eat less food, do more exercise. And they just all start screaming at him, going, oh, you pig, and all this stuff.
Well, but that's really bullshit too.
I know.
Right? Because there's no correlation between the food of exercise and weight loss, really. It's the food that you eat. So Pierce is wrong there too. But in the same sense, that's what they wanted to do, and that's what the Ozempic loved that. They did that on 60 Minutes when they came out and said, oh, it's a genetic thing, it's not your fault. And the obese woman is sitting there crying, saying, oh, I thought it was me. It is you. Again, because it's the environment again that kicked on the obesity gene at the same time. But getting back to see the correlation? Yeah. And the other correlation was that I was telling you about the podcast that I was checking out the other day.
Oh, Gary Brecka.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was on somebody else's podcast, but it was him speaking about it. And he was talking about his previous life, talking about how he used to have this job where he worked for the insurance companies.
I remember that.
And and he was explaining how the 3 leading causes of death in the United States were in this order: cardiovascular disease, number 1, cancer, number 2, and number 3 was modern medical error. Which basically is, thinking they're doing the right thing, creating a issue, are the 30 leading cause of death in our country. Again, we talk about that overutilization of medication. And this is just an example of that. So, again, that's from the life insurance aspect of that. Now, so number 2 was cancer. Excuse me. So if number 3 is the medical.
Yeah, the fact that that's not talked about more is kind of mentally insane.
Yeah,
right
the clinical error. My thing here is, who's kind of runs the cancer treatment in this country if it wasn't the Medical Association? So I think they're going to want to keep a hold on that, because they certainly don't want the medical clinical era to leapfrog cancer, because that's going to make it look even worse, correct? So I think they're going to hold on to that cancer just so they don't lose that 3rd spot too. Say 2nd spot.
Yeah, I'd be interested to look those up and just see what the actual numbers are and see how close they are.
Yeah, right. Neck and neck, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, they didn't mention that. So let's dabble on that number 1 cause of death in our country. Talk about it a little bit today. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris, are we ready to roll, brother? Let's do this thing. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Flip the Script. Dr. J. Joey here with my good buddy Cameron, and we're going to touch on the leading cause of demise in the United States today, cardiovascular disease. And this can get kind of in depth, so we're going to attempt to knock as much of this out as we can in one of our typical 30-minute podcasts. I think we'll probably look at a part 2 for this one, because, it's got some very interesting protocols that we want to make sure we touch on. This is one of those diseases that really wasn't around 100 plus years ago, and another one of those that are definitely becoming the major part of our generation, if you will. But actually, we're going to show where this actually goes back. They were starting to pinpoint this thing early in the 20s and 30s. And so today, we're going to have quite a bit of some quotes from a few doctors who were onto this thing early on, and to let everybody see that this is kind of again, if it's number one cause, it's rather rampant in our country, but it's been around for a while. So with that, I want to start with a quote. And bear with me, if you will, on my readers. Let's go back to 1628. And this was a physician by the name of William Harvey. 1628, British physician and, quote, father of cardiology. And Dr. Harvey goes on to say, the heart is the beginning of life, the sun of the microcosm. For the heart, by whose virtue and pulse the blood is moved, perfected, made apt to nourish, and is preserved from corruption and coagulation. It is the household divinity which, discharging its function, nourishes, cherishes, quickens the whole body, and is indeed the foundation of life, the source of all action. Yes, agreed. So, let's touch on just the facts, Jack, as I like to say. Again, we talked about number one cause of death in our country. Number two, cancer. And then again, number three, we talked about the modern medicine's clinical error. So we got number one. Check out some of these stats. 1 out of every 4 deaths in the U.S. each year is from cardiovascular disease. 1 out of 4. So we got cancer in there. Of course, we got automobile accidents and other, catastrophic forms of death. And then, of course, we have that medical component in there as well. But it's 1 out of 4. A person dies of cardiovascular disease every 33 seconds in the U.S. Yeah, so one just died. And another one just died.
60 will die.
Got it?
While we're doing this.
All right, check this one out. Someone has a heart attack every 40 seconds in this. Yeah.
Dang.
So much for that. As a matter of fact, with the statin drugs and all this other treatments that we are attempting to do with the aspirin and whatnot, strokes in our country have not gone down. They've actually gone up.
Yeah.
Now, the death from the stroke, well, that's decreased because we've become more aware. And look, there's a lot more hospitals than there used to be, so people are getting to the care that they need quicker, right? Mm-hmm. But as far as the causation, no, that's gone up. So again, this is why it's number one. We don't have a hold on this thing. Now check this one out. Heart disease costs the U.S. $240 billion a year.
Dang.
And this was in 2023. So, again here, what can we do? Now, we've got another quote, 1942. Dr. Royal Lee. Let's the cat out of the bag here, so to say. We might as well remove the term heart disease and supplement it with white flour disease. Boom. So, there's your culprit, primarily. Wheat in and of itself has a long history. But once they started milling this flour, and we talked about this before, the glycemic index on flour is right up there with sugar, actually higher. And of course, this is where the damage is done to the vascular system, is through the sugars, creating the damage on the artery, which then we have the plaquing that occurs down the line. So, I'll give you a great example of this. This is how long ago. Let's go back 1,000+ years. Okay, so this is really cool. So what they did is when they took the Egyptian mummies, and when they tested the DNA on these mummies, what they found was, now we're talking probably good bread back then compared to what's today, but the Egyptian mummies had death from cardiovascular disease, and they also had signs of dental decay. Now, let's move over to South America, same timeline, predominantly all meat eaters. All right, these mummies that were exhumed at this time, no cardiovascular disease, no dental decay. So this goes back some time, right? This is the involvement of the grain. Now, we're also going to talk about the fact that if we preserve the grain and the germ within the grain, well, then we have a much better product. And this is sort of what's occurred in our country, which is why the demise of these deficiencies in these vitamins, which is what I want to talk about. So, but one of the key things that happens here, that there's a byproduct of bleaching that is the major culprit, and that one of the major culprits. And it's called alloxan, Alloxan. And this is caused by the chemical reaction when the vitamin E in the germ of the bread is destroyed upon bleaching. So we actually have a chemical that actually creates this toxicity. And if I can, I want to give another quote on this one to kind of drive this home. And again, I'm looking at enhancing cardiovascular efficiency, and let's talk just a little bit about this alloxan.
How do you spell that?
Alloxan.
I looked. Oh wow, this is hilarious. I looked up alloxan, and the first thing was alloxan diabetes, alloxan-induced diabetes.
That's right. And now we're going to talk about how and why, because again, what's rampant today? Diabetes in our country. So think about this again. This is something else that jumped through the roof in 1985. And what happened in 1985? Well, they changed grain from a 4-foot plant to a 2-foot dwarf, remember?
You told me about that.
And
you told me about that years ago,
that's
actually.
Right. Well, and we had a podcast on it. So this was to curb world hunger, right? And it did. But they had 4 times the gluten in there. And they were able to harvest this wheat 2 times a year. So 1985 marked the day. That's also when, or the year, should I say. That's also when that first food pyramid came out, people. Coincidental.
Wow. That's
we'll get into the talk about autonomic disorders and other things associated around the same time. But let's go back to this. Let's go back to cardiovascular disease. Let's not get off track on this one because it's good stuff. But yes, so there it is, 1985. All right, and this is what we're talking about. So, and you just talked about the correlation with diabetes. Mm-hmm. So here we go. Alloxan's harmful effect on the pancreas, boom, are so severe that the textbook of natural medicine calls the chemical a potent beta cell toxin. And the beta cells are where the insulin is produced in the pancreas. However, even though the toxic effect of alloxan is common scientific knowledge in the research community, Cameron, the FDA still allows companies to use it when processing the foods that we digest. The good old FDA. Again, like I said, since 1985, diabetes through the roof, 200%. Scary stuff.
Yeah, this is such. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's all over the internet, and it's super simple. Like you look at alloxan in food, compound that can damage pancreatic cells, induce diabetes. All this stuff, amounts in bleached flour, you know.
And see,
I've never heard of it.
So if we didn't bleach this product, why do we bleach it? Well, because we want to keep it on the shelf longer, right? And so we take the nutrients out of this. So people understand, again, like we were talking about, you know, this is, again, Cameron, let me just jump back to this. Because people like to jump all over this. Well, you know, genetically, I'm predisposed to the cardiovascular issue because, you know, my dad died at 60-something of heart disease, right? So, you know, the reality is that less than 2% of our genetic predisposition ever really comes to filtration on its own. But if modern medicine likes to use this, where, you know, somebody will come in and for a complete workup, and they put the history in there that, you know, my dad died of this, cardiovascular at a young age, and a doctor will want to throw them on what they call preventive care, which is with that monster called that cholesterol-lowering drug, as a hypothetical possibility that he may follow his dad's early demise, right? Or baby aspirin, which we know is not aspirin, it's magnesium in the first place, and that's in my first book, talk about that in detail in Light Your Fire. So let's get back to it. Genetic predisposition. It's the epigenetics that matters. In other words, a gene cannot just turn itself on out of the blue. All right? In order for that gene to be expressed, it has to be turned on by our environment. So again, when people think, oh, I'm destined for this demise. No, you're not, people. And again, like I mentioned, if you had two twins born to that same father, one of them makes it to 80. The other one winds up in the same demise as his father. What happened there? Well, one of those twins figured out this fact that the epigenetics is associated with his environment and cleaned up his eating, while the one who winds up with the demise ate out of the same refrigerator his dad did, or basically the same lifestyle. So we do have control of 98% of our destined longevity in this world. It is under our control because it is all about the environment, which is our diet and our lifestyle. So don't let the doctors dumb you down. And don't use that lazy excuse of it's in my genes, because it may be in your genes. It's in all our genes. Don't express that gene. And that's what hopefully we're going to be able to enlighten today when we touch on a couple major nutrients for prevention of cardiovascular disease.
Hey, it might be in your genes, but don't put it in
Yes, that doesn't mean you need to double the size of your genes. That would be the size of your blue jeans. That would be a sign. There's your sign, right? You got that? Who said that? I don't know. It's one of the country folks. Okay, so let's go on to this one right here. Here's a quote, all right? Dr. Royal Lee, 1939, one of my mentors. The heart is the most reflective muscle of balanced nutrition or malnutrition. Boom.
That's good.
I mean, this is an unbelievable organ. Takes a beating and keeps on ticking. And at the same time, if you beat it up, but you stop and take the time to re-nourish it, it's amazing. And what it's capable of correcting the damage done. Now, that is something that this country, obviously, has a hard time accepting. Number one cause of death in the United States. So hopefully we can enlighten a little bit of the examples of those issues coming down the road. You remember the podcast that we did on carbohydrates? Mm-hmm. It's a great place to start. And we talked about the correlation with bread consumption in this country. First of all, let's touch on this. The glycemic index of wheat bread. Let's go to that real quick. Remember, the closer to 100 we are, the closer we are to pure glucose. So it turns out that wheat bread has a glycemic index of around 72. Table sugar, 65, below wheat bread. Mars bar at around 55. So like I write in my first book, Light Your Fire.
Like the protein bars?
No, just a Mars candy bar.
Oh,
boom.
I thought you were talking about
55.
There's something called a large bar. You got
it?
Snickers or something.
Yeah, Snickers. Okay, well, same thing. 55. So you're better off eating that turkey sandwich between two Mars bars than you are 2 slices of wheat bread. Bam, people. How's that for reality for you? Think about that next time you're going down to the deli.
Yummy.
Right? So, I mean, this is the reality.
What about like the whole wheat bread?
Well, the whole wheat's actually worse than the white.
No.
Hello, yes it is. If you Google
Dang.
this, you'll find, actually, yes. And I think it passed that about 10, 15 years ago. Because remember, everybody used to say, stay away from the white bread. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Because of what they've done to the wheat now.
Yeah, Doc, I'll go into Publix and I'll see these people standing in line and they got that, boy, I'm doing something good for myself look in their face. Yeah. And then they get these massive submarine rolls and, just piling all kind of ungodliness up on it.
But they got the wheat bread on the outside, right? Right. Yes, yes, exactly. While I just throw the sugar bomb in my body, right? And that's why if you all said it, you throw as much fat on there as you possibly can. But so we get to that. So here's what happens again. The bread and sugar which again, we just talked about bread is 72 glycemic index. Well, it's worse than table sugar. This will literally pull the B vitamins out of the body like a vacuum cleaner. Why? Well, because they process the bread, they fortify it with the synthetic B. The body doesn't know what to do with this, and so when you consume it, it's trying to make a food, and it will actually deplete the B vitamin reserves in the body. And we're going to talk about the power of the B vitamin in cardiovascular health. In my opinion, no more powerful vitamin or supplement that you're ever going to put in your mouth. All right. We're also we'll touch on things like vitamin E. All right. Powerful antioxidant, increases oxygen utilization. We'll go on with calcium, gives strength to the muscle for the contraction to pump the blood through. Magnesium does right the opposite. Magnesium is a natural vasodilator, muscle relaxer. And like I talked about in my first book, somebody has a cardiac event, they get rushed to the hospital. They don't hook them up on an aspirin drip, Jack. No. What do they hook you up on? Magnesium sulfate. Enough said. So remember, it was never aspirin, it was bufferin in the first place on the study for preventing cardiovascular related issues. And bufferin is buffered with magnesium. There you go. Garlic, another powerful antioxidant. And garlic has been found to decrease cholesterol. And you know how I feel about that because cholesterol is not a precursor to cardiovascular disease. Not a precursor. It's in there 10th or 12th down the line. There's a whole hell of a lot of other things and nothing that's going to give you that damage and increase the probability. As Dr. Julian says in the metabolical book, sugar increases the likelihood of cardiovascular disease by 1,000%. Cholesterol nowhere near that. So maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing, doctors, when we're pushing that cholesterol hypothesis. Perhaps the biggest scam of our lifetime, brother. So, and then we got hawthorn herb, which is known as the heart herb. Hopefully may not get to that one today, but it's a great one. Vitamin C, can't say enough about it. Again, powerful antioxidant, runs so many of the metabolic functions. And then again, also we're going to talk about vitamin F briefly. Vitamin F, never heard of it. So, okay. So don't run down to your GNC and tell the guy down there, I need some vitamin F. And we're also going to talk about vitamin B4 today. And don't go down there and ask him for that either. The guy will lose his mind, okay? These things, vitamin F, first of all, it's not termed that anymore, but basically it's the fat vitamin. You would know it more as a polyunsaturated fatty acid, but this is what drives the calcium. So we're going to get into that hopefully today. And, so again, think of vitamin F, just good fats. All right. So let's touch on the B vitamin.
And that's another thing is people need to go and watch our podcast on vitamins, or else they may listen to this and just go to Walmart and grab some chalk pill that's got nothing.
Well, yeah,
in
we're
it.
going to talk about this right now. We're getting ready to go into a specific entity in the B vitamin that is, to me, like the most powerful of the B family, which you're not going to find it in a synthetic vitamin, and that's that B4. We're going to get to that in a minute. But, so the first, let's look at the B vitamin here. The first major disease that they identified associated with B vitamin deficiency was known as beriberi. Now, beriberi comes from Sri Lanka, where that term literally means I can't, or total fatigue. So there again, this means the lack of the muscle tone and function at the muscular system. So this is a precursor to congestive heart failure. And as we're going to find, electrical impulses in the heart. So now what you think in AFib and arrhythmias. All right. So again, think about what we have here. We got bread, sucking this vitamin out of us like a vacuum cleaner. It really shouldn't be a surprise, people, why this is part of our generation. This, again, is a metabolic-related issue. Metabolic, metabolism. We're eating ourselves into this mess. So this number one cause of death in the United States is totally reversible. That's the key thing. It's sort of the sad thing that we're dealing with, because I can tell you, I had a patient come in just yesterday, and we're dealing with autonomic disorders with her. She's got 3 of them now. And of course, that again is also caused not only by the leaky gut, but also the inflammation, and the sugar issue complicates it. So she knows she needs to cut out the bread, but she told me straight up, Doc, I love bread. And I know, I'm telling you, see, that's the thing. And we created it today with chemicals in it so that they literally cross the blood-brain barrier and go and actually bind to the morphine receptor sites. These things are known as zorphines, and basically you go looking for it. So again, sorry, but this is big food Congress induced addiction. So you see, people, we're not, in one sense, we're not all totally to blame, but what we're hoping to do here is give you some insight, some knowledge, so you have control, because really, I mean, it's doable. You know, there's a lot of us out here who aren't addicted to that stuff, and a lot of that has to do with the knowledge, and so hopefully we'll be able to grasp some of that today. So again, the physiological remedy for an enlarged heart is going to be the consumption of the B vitamin in our diet. And I'll explain this correlation here just a minute with a kitchen household utensil. But let's get to this one. So I want to touch a little bit on this specific part of the B family known as vitamin B4. It is the B vitamin is responsible for converting chemical energy to electrical energy in the heart. Okay, the term is asynchronisis. Asynchronisis, and this is probably most likely, again, what we're looking for is a deficiency of this B4 factor, this vitamin. It was formerly designated adenine. I say that it was formerly designated that because this B4 cannot be found in synthetic B vitamins. Why? Well, because man hasn't learned how to isolate it from B1 thymine yet. And since the scientists can't isolate it, guess who says it doesn't exist? The FDA. Since man can't make it, therefore it cannot be real. It's like, whatever.
Yeah, that's weird.
I know. That's just it. Remember, though, again, they also say, right, disease cannot be healed by anything but a synthetic drug. Food does not heal. So forget about it if you ever develop scurvy, which we know was a vitamin C deficiency issue, and we all run rampant with scurvy today. That's one of the other precursors to cardiovascular disease for another day. Got it? Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So when you isolate B4 complex from the wheat germ, or basically when you isolate any of these B vitamins, you're going to lose other proteins that are linked within it, right? And this is why you cannot take a synthetic vitamin and call it a food and expect to get the reactions that you're going to get from a whole food vitamin. So I'm sorry, you're not going to get it at CVS, you're not going to get it at GNC, you're not going to get it from, unless of course GNC happens to carry, and which I'm unfamiliar with, a food-based organic.
They don't, right?
They don't, no. So, with B4, I want you thinking AFib, boom. Arrhythmias, boom. And when it comes to overall B vitamin support, deficiencies, look towards things like anything, because the B vitamin, what it does basically, it gives the strength to the heart. I'm going to explain this in a minute. So if we don't have the strength within the heart muscle itself, we wind up with leaky valves. There goes your mitral valve prolapse. And then again, the other cause of a vitamin deficiency and calcium here for a bit is going to be loss of the strength of the heart as well. And as we get older, then we start looking at congestive heart failure. Okay? So in the youth, early mitral valve prolapses issues. Now, they occur farther on down the age spectrum as well, but this is one of those things that we do see very early on in children. So you understand, our children are already developing weakness within the muscle of the heart itself. That is one of the precursors, mitral valve. And then we have later on in life, the congestive heart failure, which is actually, in a sense, it's the swelling of the heart. So if I can, what I want to do here is, try to give you another quote real quick from Dr. Roy Lee. It's the physiological remedy for enlarged heart, for it's the factor of the B complex that maintains vascular and muscular tone. So let me give you an example of this, okay? Take a sponge in the kitchen. When you first get that sponge, it's dry and it's tone. You fill that sponge with water, what does it do? It swells up, correct? Okay. Put that sponge on the window shelf, come back the next day, and what's that sponge look like? Well, it's shrunken back down. That water has come out of it, and now it's decreased in its size. So with the heart, I want you to think of it this way. Think of it as a sponge. I need these B vitamins to give that contraction to the heart, and as we're going to learn later, same thing with calcium, gives the ventricles the strength to push the blood back out of the heart with the B vitamins. So if I don't have adequate, right, what happens is I take this sponge, I fill it up with water, and then I only squeeze half of that water out of that sponge, drop it back in that bucket. What's that sponge going to do over time? It's going to enlarge. In a sense, that's what's happening. If the heart itself cannot eliminate the blood that comes within it completely, when it refills itself, it tends to increase in size and enlarge. That's the correlation between the B vitamin deficiency and congestive heart failure, or overgrowth of the size of the heart. B vitamins give us the strength. The same thing with the muscle contractions. B vitamins are also necessary for our rugae muscles within our intestines. Gives them the energy because of the nerve pulse and the contraction ability to move our bowels. B vitamin deficiency and a correlation between constipation? Very much so. Okay. And even the muscle contraction itself that we're using during exercise. So, again, let's talk about where do we get these things from naturally? Well, first of all, let's talk about the fact of, we talk about my standard process B Core, which the first product in that is liver and brewer's yeast. So there's two products that you can naturally find high B vitamins in. Liver, which again, like I said, I'm not into that so much myself. Brewer's yeast, another great source of that. Beets, beet juice. You see a lot of that on the television now, talking about the heart health with the use of the beets. There's another example. Cereal germs, key thing. Our cereals today are processed in there without the germ. That is where the problem lies. So if we could maintain the germ within that, yes, then some of your grains will carry the B vitamin. And then, of course, your eggs. So, the good old, and the fat of the eggs, I might add, okay? So keep the yellow stuff in there. That's where the flavor is. That's where the nutrients are. So let's touch on a couple more quotes because, again, what are we pointing towards here? We're pointing toward processed flour as one of the primary culprits, which is in everything that we consume in America. And the children do from the start of it, onset of time. The Pop-Tart, here we go. Boom, here comes a 4-year-old. Doesn't have a shot coming out of the hole, right? Okay, sorry. Didn't mean it that way, but from the beginning, should I say?
Right.
So here goes a couple for you right here. Check this out, 1910, Cameron. So again, like I was talking about earlier, this is not like today. This didn't just happen around 1985 when we changed the grain from to a 2-foot dwarf and put all that extra glutens in there. But 1910, bleach white flour was declared unfit for human food by the Federal Western District Court of Missouri. Unfit. 1910. But somehow the powers that be kept on coming on, right? Beach flour is so poisonous to dogs that they get, check this out, called running fits from eating white bread, a common disease known by all vets, right? This disease has recently been proven to be exclusively to bleached chemicals in the flour, and that is in 1947. My dog, I swear to you, she won't eat it. If you have something like a sandwich or something that has the meat in it and whatnot, and you throw the meat down, she'll get it. But if you throw that bread down, I think they know. Dang. I think they know, right?
Yeah, because they can smell like blood sugar and stuff. That's how they can sense they have the.
And a dog will eat its own poop, so that's saying something.
Well, it's better than the bread, right, brother? Yeah, that is kind of, ooh. All right, thanks for bringing that one up, Chris. All right, right before lunch. Okay, here's another one. Valuable vitamins are destroyed by the bleach chemical. So the chemical that they use to bleach it is where these are destroyed. Check this one. This one's wild. When cattle are fed grain without these vitamins, they show no harmful effects until they suddenly drop dead.
Dang.
Yeah, that's from Science Magazine, Volume 104, page 312, date 1947. Note, heart disease is a leading cause of death in this country. So, 1947, brother.
Well, Doc, I'm sure we've improved it in the last 80 years.
What's that?
The refining of flour.
Yeah. Oh, have we improved it? Oh, yeah. They can do it in a matter of seconds now, probably, right, brother? Yeah. And then, and then improved it because then we threw in some synthetic vitamins to enrich it. Yes, because somebody said you need some of this back in there, even if the body doesn't know what to do with it. So the question is it the bleach flour that we eat? Well, check this one out. I don't know. You tell me. Heart disease is rare in China, where bleach flour is also rare. So this is something that we can do to make a major change in our longevity, all right, and overall cost of healthcare in America. Yeah, so hopefully that's an enlightening place to start. And again, like I said, you got to go with the organics. You either get your B vitamins in your food, or else you have to supplement them. And sadly, we need to supplement them because too many things we're consuming in our diet are bleaching them out. So if we got a couple minutes, can I get into calcium for a second?
We're at, I think, third. What are we at?
It's 37, I think.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, let's roll in real quick to calcium because that's another one. That's why I said we're going to need 2 parts for this one here. All right. Cardiovascular disease and the calcium connection. The heart needs calcium to perform a complete ventricular contraction. All right. So this is the heartbeat, if you will. Calcium. But the key here again, we talked about last time in calcium. Most of us have adequate calcium in the body. What we need to do is we got to get it in where it needs to be done, where it needs to be. And that's what your polyunsaturated fat that we were talking about earlier. That's your vitamin F that we were talking about. That your polyunsaturated, this ionizes the calcium. We also talked about why. This is why calcium carbonate will not work. There's 15 steps to ionize calcium carbonate. Like I always say, you might as well lick the sidewalk. The number one calcium sold in America. So we won't ionize calcium, something like calcium lactate that has 1 step. But we also need the essential fatty acid in order to ionize the calcium to get it into the tissue to allow this contraction to occur in the heart to help pump the blood out of the heart. So with that in mind, think not consuming the calcium necessarily, but consuming the essential fatty acids necessary for driving it. And where are we going to find this? Well, good sources of that vitamin F are, first of all, butter. Organic butter, great source of vitamin F. Forget about that thing about cardiovascular disease and cholesterol and butter, because God, our creator, anything with cholesterol has an antagonist in it. And in this case, in butter, you're going to find the lecithin in there, or the egg's going to has the lecithin to offset the cholesterol, which is all the scam anyway. Don't get me started on margarine, because that fat never gets broken down. And when you put that in the body, the margarine increases your cholesterol to carry that thing that's gray plastic through the body for who knows how long, right? So that actually elevates your cholesterol, margarine. So that's about that farce. Another good source, of course, is flaxseed oil, fish oil, and my favorite, cod liver oil. So that's the correlation between calcium and the necessity for that. So we'll get into magnesium, vitamin E. We'll do that on part 2, because, again, it's a lot of fun, but it's intense. And we like to keep it kind of short so we don't bombard you with too much. And hopefully we kept the big words to a minimum. And if not, if you have any questions or would like any additional information on how to acquire any of these supplements that Cameron and I are speaking of, are the protocols that we mentioned in this podcast of Flip the Script, you can contact me via email at info@drjoeyjones.com. That's info, I-N-F-O, at drjoeyjones.com. And I would be more than glad to elaborate and let you know where you could find these sources in your area. So again, intense, man. All right. Until next time, Cameron and myself, Dr. J, say, have yourself a great day, as always.
So you're not missing one.
Thank you, Chris. Ciao for now.